The brilliant lights of Nexus Station blazed against the backdrop of infinite space, a jewel of commerce and luxury nestled between three spiral arms of the galaxy. For the elite of 1,000 star systems, Nexus represented the pinnacle of interstellar trade, a place where anything could be bought for the right price. Commander Adriel Bennett had never imagined he would see it like this through the reinforced viewport of a containment module, his wrists bound by energy restraints that hummed with a soft blue glow. 6 weeks ago, he had been leading Earth's Special Tactical Response Unit on a routine security operation in the European colonies. Now he was cargo. Final approach to Docking Bay 17 announced the ship's AI in its unnervingly pleasant tone. All merchandise to prepare for transfer. Adriel grimaced at the word merchandise. The Galactic Covenant had supposedly protected sentient species, like humans under the Protected Species Act, a well-intentioned piece of legislation, with loopholes large enough to fly a battlecruiser through. Technically, trafficking in protected species was forbidden, but private collection for cultural and scientific purposes remained perfectly legal, provided the proper forms were filed and the exorbitant fees paid. The ship shuddered as it connected with Nexus Station's docking clamps. Adriel felt his stomach lurch, both from the mechanical jolt and the knowledge of what awaited him. He'd heard rumors about Vexillion Moors and his infamous rare item auctions, but he'd dismissed them as spacer tales. Now he knew better. 2 Krivlaxian guards approached his containment module, their scaled skin gleaming under the harsh lights. Standing nearly 8 feet tall with reinforced exoskeletons and tri-pupilled eyes, they were the preferred muscle of the interstellar black market. "On your feet, human!" the larger one growled, deactivating the force field. "Moores wants his merchandise pristine. Don't make us damage you." Adriel rose slowly, measuring his options. 6 weeks of captivity had weakened him, but not broken his spirit or tactical mind. Still, he recognized futility when he saw it. Surrounded by hostiles, separated from any allies by countless light years, his best strategy was to conserve energy and await an opportunity. "I'm standing," he said, keeping his voice level. "Though I should warn you, human merchandise comes with human temperament." The Krivlaxian made a sound that might have been laughter. "Save the brave talk for someone who cares, Earthman. Where you're going, that fire will either make you valuable or get you killed. Neither concerns us." They led him through a series of pristine corridors, past luxury boutiques selling wares from across the galaxy. Wealthy patrons from dozens of species paused in their shopping to stare at the human being escorted by the guards. Some looked curious, others disgusted, a few seemed amused. None intervened. Finally, they reached an ornate door, marked with a symbol of Moore's Trading House, a stylized galaxy with a single bright star at its center. "Your new life begins beyond that door," the guard said, shoving Adriel forward. "Try to fetch a good price. Moores hates taking losses." The door slid open with a pneumatic hiss, revealing a dimly lit preparation chamber. Standing in the center, resplendent in a suit that seemed to shift colors with each movement, was Vexillion Moores himself. Though physically similar to humans in basic structure, Moore's species, the Lamodians, had evolved on a world with 30% higher gravity and a caustic atmosphere. This had rendered them compact, but incredibly dense in muscle mass, with skin that resembled polished obsidian. Moore's eyes, 4 iridescent orbs arranged in a diamond pattern, focused on Adriel with predatory intensity. "Ah, my most interesting acquisition in cycles," Moores exclaimed, his voice melodic, but with an underlying rasp. "Former Commander Adriel Bennett of Earth's Special Tactical Response Unit. Your file makes for fascinating reading." "I wasn't aware I'd authorized the release of my personal records," Adriel replied coldly. Moores laughed, a sound like stones sliding against each other. "Authorization is such a tedious concept. Information, like all things of value, simply flows to those willing to pay its price." He circled Adriel, examining him as one might appraise a show animal. You humans are such a contradiction, physically fragile, yet surprisingly resilient. Technologically primitive compared to most Covenant species, yet advancing at a rate that makes the Galactic Council nervous. Nervous enough to allow black market traders to kidnap Earth citizens? Adriel asked. Black market. My dear Commander, everything I do is perfectly legal under Covenant law. The paperwork is quite extensive, I assure you. Moores gestured to an assistant, who approached with a hovering tray of instruments. Now, then, we must prepare you for presentation. The auction begins in 1 standard hour, and I have several interested parties. Adriel tensed. I'm not some prize stallion to be groomed for show. No, you're far more valuable, Moores replied, selecting something that resembled a silver pen from the tray. You're the first human Special Forces commander ever to appear on the private market. Your combat record, psychological profile, and genetic resilience make you quite the collector's item. Before Adriel could respond, Moores pressed the device to his neck. A cold sensation spread through his veins, and he felt his muscles relax involuntarily. A mild paralytic, Moores explained. It won't affect your cognitive functions, but it will keep you from doing anything impulsive during the auction. The effect will wear off once you're safely in your new owner's custody. I am not merchandise, Adriel managed to say, though his lips felt numb. Everything and everyone is merchandise, Commander Bennett. Moores said, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence. The sooner you accept that reality, the easier your transition will be. Now, let's make you presentable for your debut. The auction hall of Nexus Station resembled a classical amphitheater, with concentric rings of seating surrounding a central circular platform. Unlike ancient Roman colosseums, however, this arena featured gravity-defying architecture, hovering display screens, and atmospheric adjustments for each seating section to accommodate the diverse physiological needs of the attendees. Adriel stood on the presentation platform, unable to move, but fully aware of his surroundings. The paralytic had left him in a state of forced calm, like being underwater. He could see nearly 300 beings of various species seated in the audience chambers, most wearing attire that screamed wealth and status. Some appeared humanoid. Others were utterly alien crystalline entities, gaseous beings contained in environmental suits, multi-limbed insectoids, and creatures that seemed to phase in and out of visible reality. Vexillion Moores stood beside him, addressing the crowd through an amplification system that automatically translated his words into the preferred language of each attendee. Distinguished guests, honored collectors, and esteemed representatives of the Galactic Covenant. Moores began, his voice oozing confidence. Today, I present a truly exceptional specimen from Earth, a protected species under Covenant law, but available to you with all proper clearances and documentation. Holographic displays activated around the platform, showing Adriel's military record, physical specifications, and genetic profile. A murmur rippled through the audience. Commander Adriel Bennett, Moores, continued, decorated leader of Earth's elite Special Tactical Response Unit, veteran of the Europa Colony insurrection and the Mars mining disputes, expert in 12 forms of combat with confirmed survival in extreme environments ranging from the vacuum of space to the pressure depths of Earth's oceans. Adriel watched as the audience evaluated him. Unlike the crude slave markets of human history, this was a sophisticated affair. The patrons weren't leering or jeering, but clinically assessing his value, as they might appraise a rare artifact or investment opportunity. Somehow that made it more dehumanizing. We shall begin the bidding at 5 million galactic credits, Moores announced. Please note that this acquisition includes all legal documentation for cultural and scientific ownership, plus a comprehensive biological profile and psychometric evaluation. The auction hall fell silent. Moores waited, his 4 eyes blinking in confusion. He repeated the opening bid. Again, silence. Finally, a voice called out from one of the premium viewing boxes. A Zortanian ambassador, recognizable by his crystalline head crest, leaned forward. Trader Moores, while your offering is indeed unique, we must express concerns about the practical value. Humans are notoriously fragile. Another voice joined in this one, belonging to a Dressida merchant queen. Indeed, their average lifespan is barely a century. Their bones break under minimal pressure. They require constant hydration and can die from temperature variations that would be imperceptible to most evolved species. Moore's obsidian skin seemed to darken with frustration. Esteemed guests, you misunderstand the value proposition. What humans lack in physical robustness, they compensate for in adaptability and cognitive resilience. This specimen has an estimated remaining lifespan of perhaps 70 years at most, interrupted a third voice, a Quarian scientist whose body was mostly mechanical. An impractical investment for serious collectors. Adriel would have laughed if the paralytic hadn't constrained his facial muscles. The most elite buyers in the galaxy were rejecting him, not because trafficking sentient beings was morally repugnant, but because they considered humans too physically delicate to be worth the investment. Moores wasn't giving up. Distinguished guests, perhaps I haven't adequately conveyed Commander Bennett's exceptional qualities. His resilience extends beyond the physical. During his military service, he survived 17 direct combat engagements where others perished. His tactical innovations during the Europa crisis are studied even by Covenant strategists. The trader activated another holographic display, showing Adriel in various combat scenarios. Additionally, human neuroplasticity allows for remarkable adaptation. Commander Bennett speaks 4 Earth languages fluently and has demonstrated aptitude for learning Covenant Standard at an accelerated rate. A few audience members showed renewed interest, but the momentum had clearly stalled. 2 million credits offered a Palaxian art dealer tentatively. 3 million countered a hooded figure whose species Adriel couldn't identify. Moores seemed relieved to have any bids at all, though the offers were well below his opening price. 3 million from the honorable representative of the Shrike Consortium. Do I hear 3.5? The bidding continued desultorily, reaching 4 million credits before stalling again. Moores was growing visibly agitated, his skin shifting from obsidian to a mottled gray. Ladies, gentlemen, and distinguished beings of all designations, he said, trying to reinvigorate the proceedings. Consider the rarity of this opportunity. The Earth governments have become increasingly protective of their citizens since joining the Covenant. Future acquisitions may be impossible as their influence grows. A few more half-hearted bids pushed the price to 4.5 million, still far below Moore's expectations. The trader looked as though he might terminate the auction altogether when a commotion erupted at the main entrance to the hall. The grand doors swung open, and a hush fell over the assembly. Even through his paralytic-induced calm, Adriel felt a shift in the atmosphere, as though the gravitational center of the room had suddenly changed. 2 rows of guards entered their armor, a distinctive crimson and gold faces, concealed behind helmets that resembled stylized predator birds. They formed a path, and behind them walked a figure that caused even Moores to straighten his posture. She was tall, nearly 7 feet, with skin the color of burnished copper, and hair that seemed to capture and refract light, like liquid rubies. What initially appeared to be an elaborate headdress was, upon closer inspection, a pair of actual horns that curved elegantly upward before sweeping back, adorned with precious metals and gems. From her shoulders extended what looked like vestigial wings, covered in scales that shifted from crimson to gold depending on how the light struck them. Adriel had heard of this species but never seen one in person. The Crimson Dominion, an ancient civilization from the galactic core, renowned for their physical prowess, technological advancement, and rigidly hierarchical society. Her Sovereign Majesty, Queen Elira of the Crimson Dominion, announced a herald who had entered with the guards. Moores dropped into a deep bow. Your Majesty honors our humble proceedings with her divine presence. Queen Elira's eyes, vertical pupils, set in irises of molten gold, swept across the room before settling on the auction platform. Her gaze locked with Adriel's, and despite the paralytic, he felt a jolt like electricity through his nervous system. "Continue," she commanded, her voice resonant and musical, yet carrying an undercurrent of absolute authority. Moores, clearly flustered, but trying to capitalize on this unexpected development, resumed his pitch with renewed vigor. "We were just discussing the remarkable qualities of this human specimen, Your Majesty. Despite his species' physical limitations, Commander Bennett represents the pinnacle of Earth's military capacity and adaptive intelligence." Queen Elira tilted her head slightly, studying Adriel with unnerving intensity. "Does he speak?" "The specimen is currently under temporary paralytic constraint for transport safety, Your Majesty, but his cognitive functions are fully intact. The effect can be reversed immediately if you wish to interact with him." "That won't be necessary." She stepped closer to the platform now, only a few feet from Adriel. Though he couldn't move, he maintained eye contact, refusing to be intimidated despite her imposing presence. After what seemed an eternity, she turned to Moores. 10 million credits. A collective gasp rippled through the auction hall. 10 million was more than double the current highest bid, and even exceeded Moore's initial asking price. The trader could barely contain his excitement. 10 million credits from Her Sovereign Majesty. Do I hear 10.5? The hall remained silent. No one dared to bid against the Queen of the Crimson Dominion. "Very well. Sold to Her Majesty, Queen Elira, for 10 million galactic credits." Moores concluded, practically vibrating with satisfaction. As the other attendees began to filter out, some casting curious glances back at the platform, Queen Elira approached Adriel directly. "Commander Bennett," she said, her voice lower, now meant for him alone, "your reputation precedes you." Despite the paralytic, Adriel managed to form words. "I wasn't aware I had a reputation beyond Earth, Your Majesty." A slight smile curved her lips. "There is much you are not aware of regarding your place in galactic affairs. That will change." She turned to one of her guards. "Captain Serafina, arrange for the commander's transfer to the royal vessel. Ensure he is treated with all proper protocols for a military attaché." The guard saluted, fist to chest. "At once, Your Majesty." Military attaché Adriel's mind raced despite the chemical calm forced upon him. That was a diplomatic designation, not a term for personal property. Elira turned back to him, and for a brief moment her regal mask seemed to slip, revealing something almost like amusement. "Welcome to your new life, Commander Bennett," she said. "I suspect it will be significantly more interesting than your previous one." As the Queen's guards moved to transfer him to her ship, Adriel caught Moores, watching with a calculating expression. The trader approached Queen Elira with a deferential bow. "Your Majesty, if I might inquire purely from academic curiosity, what interested you in this particular specimen? I have several other exceptional acquisitions that might complement your collection." Elira regarded Moores with the cool detachment of one observing an insect. "Trader Moores, if I wish to expand my collection, as you put it, you would be the first to know." She gestured toward Adriel. "This acquisition serves the Dominion's strategic interests. Beyond that, my motivations are not your concern." Moores bowed even lower. "Of course, Your Majesty. I meant no impertinence." "See that you remember that," she replied. With a final imperious glance around the auction hall, Queen Elira turned and departed, her guards forming a protective phalanx around her. As Adriel was escorted behind her, the paralytic beginning to wear off enough that he could walk with assistance, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had just been thrust into something far larger and more complex than a simple case of interstellar trafficking. The royal vessel of the Crimson Dominion dwarfed most of the other ships docked at Nexus Station. Named the Serial's Pride, after the Dominion's capital world, it resembled a massive predatory bird, its hull plated with actual crimson-hued metal, rather than merely painted. As Adriel was escorted up the boarding ramp by Captain Serafina and her guards, he felt the paralytic's effects continuing to fade returning sensation to his extremities. The interior of the ship belied its martial exterior. Where Adriel had expected utilitarian military design, he instead found an environment that merged advanced technology with artistic splendor. The corridors were wide and tall, to accommodate the Dominion species' larger frames, lined with materials that resembled both metal and living tissue pulsing subtly with internal light. "The paralytic should wear off completely within the next 20 minutes, Captain Serafina informed him. Unlike her queen, she kept her wings larger and more functional looking than Elira's vestigial ones, folded tightly against her back. Her horns were smaller and unadorned, marking her as a different caste within Dominion society. "Good to know," Adriel replied, testing his vocal cords, which felt rusty from disuse. "Where exactly am I being taken?" "To quarters appropriate for your status." She answered, her tone professional, but not hostile. "Her Majesty has designated you as a military attaché, which grants you certain privileges and obligations. A full briefing will be provided once we reach Serial." Adriel nodded, conserving his strength as they continued through the ship. He noticed other crew members watching him with undisguised curiosity. Humans were clearly a rarity in the Dominion. Finally, they reached what appeared to be guest quarters, a spacious chamber, with furnishings that would have seemed luxurious, even by Earth standards. A large viewport offered a spectacular view of Nexus Station and the starfield beyond. "These will be your accommodations during transit," Captain Serafina said. "The journey to Serial takes approximately 6 standard days. You will find appropriate attire in the wardrobe. Medical staff will visit shortly to conduct a health assessment." "Am I a prisoner?" Adriel asked directly. The captain regarded him with an evaluating gaze. "You are a strategic asset acquired by Her Majesty at considerable expense. Security protocols will remain in effect, but you are not a prisoner in the sense you imply." She gestured to a panel near the door. "This communication system will connect you with ship services. The outer door is keyed to authorized personnel only." With that, she departed, leaving Adriel alone for the first time since his capture weeks ago. As soon as the door closed, he began a methodical exploration of the quarters, his special forces training kicking in automatically. He checked for surveillance devices. Several, all quite sophisticated, tested the communications panel. Functional, but restricted, examined the viewport, genuine. Not a simulation, but made of virtually indestructible material, and inventoried potential weapons, or tools, none obvious. The wardrobe contained clothing in his size, styled in what appeared to be a Dominion military-adjacent fashion, functional, but with decorative elements in the crimson and gold of the royal house. There was no Earth-style attire, making it clear that his previous identity was expected to be shed. As promised, medical staff arrived shortly, a team led by a female Dominion, who introduced herself as Dr. Alindra. Unlike the warriors, her wings were almost non-existent, and her horns curled close to her skull, marking her as from the scholarly caste. "Commander Bennett," she greeted him, her voice gentler than the others he'd encountered. "I must conduct a comprehensive health assessment to ensure your physiological needs are properly met during your service to the Dominion." "My service wasn't exactly voluntary," Adriel pointed out, as she directed him to sit on an examination platform that extended from the wall. Dr. Alindra's expression remained neutral. "The circumstances of your acquisition are not my concern. My duty is to ensure your well-being." She activated a series of scanning devices that hummed as they orbited his body. "Humans are unusual in Dominion territory. Your biological requirements will need careful monitoring." Despite his situation, Adriel found himself curious. "How many humans have you treated before?" "You are the third I have personally examined," she admitted. "The others were diplomatic envoys who visited briefly. Your case is unprecedented, a permanent position within the royal household." "So I'm to be kept as what exactly? The Queen's pet human?" Dr. Alindra's golden eyes flashed with something like disapproval. "Her Majesty does not keep pets, Commander. If she has designated you as a military attaché, then that is precisely what you are. The Queen of the Crimson Dominion does not speak lightly or without purpose. Adriel decided to press further. Then why would she pay 10 million credits for me at an auction, meant for collectors and researchers? Military attachés are usually assigned through diplomatic channels. The doctor busied herself with reading the scanner outputs. Her Majesty's strategies are often multi-layered and far-reaching. What appears as one thing may serve many purposes. She paused, seeming to consider whether to continue. However, I can tell you that your species has recently become of great interest to certain factions within the Dominion, for reasons beyond my clearance to know. Before Adriel could inquire further, the scanner emitted a series of rapid tones. Dr. Alindra frowned, adjusting the device and scanning again, focusing on his head. "Fascinating," she murmured. "Your neural patterns show unusual activity for a human. Have you undergone any specialized cognitive enhancement procedures?" Adriel shook his head. "Standard military neural interface training, nothing exotic by Earth standards." She made several notes on her datapad. "There are indicators of neural plasticity beyond typical human parameters. Most interesting." She completed her examination efficiently, then provided him with a small device resembling a metallic disc. "This will attach to your skin and monitor your vital functions. It will also alert medical staff if you experience any adverse reactions to Dominion environments or sustenance." After the medical team departed, Adriel was left alone again. The paralytic had fully worn off, leaving him physically unrestricted, but still effectively contained. He spent the next several hours testing boundaries, both of his quarters and of what the ship's systems would tell him. The answers were uniformly incomplete, but not entirely uninformative. He was permitted access to basic information about the Crimson Dominion, but nothing sensitive. He could request food and water, but not communicate with anyone outside his quarters, except through monitored channels. His military training had prepared him for captivity, the psychological techniques to maintain sanity, the importance of gathering information, the need to stay physically conditioned. What it hadn't prepared him for was captivity disguised as privileged status. On the third day of the journey, as Adriel was completing a series of calisthenics, adapted to the confines of his quarters, the communication panel chimed. "Commander Bennett," came the voice of Captain Serafina. "Her Majesty requests your presence in the Royal Observation Deck." Adriel paused mid-exercise. "I'll need directions." "An escort will arrive momentarily." Sure enough, within minutes, 2 royal guards appeared at his door. They were respectful but vigilant as they led him through parts of the ship he hadn't seen before. The observation deck proved to be a magnificent chamber at the ship's prow, with a transparent dome, offering a 180-degree view of space. The vessel had entered hyperspace, and the resulting visual effect, a tunnel of stretched starlight, was mesmerizing. Queen Elira stood alone at the center of the chamber, her back to the entrance wings, and horns illuminated by the ethereal light of hyperspace. Without turning, she spoke. "Leave us," she commanded, and the guards immediately withdrew. Adriel remained near the entrance, alert and wary. "You wanted to see me, Your Majesty." She turned then, and he was struck again by her imposing presence. Unlike at the auction, she now wore a more practical uniform, though still regal in design. Her wings seemed more prominent in this light, the scales catching and reflecting the surreal glow from outside. "I wish to observe how you are adapting," she said, gesturing for him to approach. "Dr. Alindra's reports indicate some anomalies in your neural patterns." "I wasn't aware I was being so thoroughly studied," Adriel replied, moving forward but maintaining a respectful distance. "Everything within my domain is studied, Commander Bennett. Knowledge is as essential to power as strength." She walked to a small platform that held a decanter and 2 crystalline glasses. "Would you care for refreshment? This has been analyzed and adjusted to be compatible with human physiology." The offer surprised him. "Thank you," he said, accepting the glass she extended. The liquid inside was amber, with subtle phosphorescent highlights, smelling faintly of spice and citrus. Adriel took a cautious sip and found the taste pleasant, like a complex earth whiskey, with notes he couldn't identify. "You are confused by your situation," Elira said. "It wasn't a question." "Wouldn't you be? One moment I'm leading a security operation on Europa, the next I'm being auctioned off like a rare antiquity. And now I'm sharing drinks with the queen of an empire I barely knew existed a week ago." She made a sound that might have been amusement. "Your directness is refreshing. The Dominion Court is a nest of veiled meanings and calculated deferences." She took a sip from her own glass. "You wonder why I purchased you." The thought had crossed my mind. Elira moved to a control panel and activated a holographic display. A three-dimensional map of the galaxy materialized between them, with certain regions highlighted in various colors. "The Crimson Dominion has existed for over 20,000 years," she began, controlling a significant portion of the galactic core. "We were among the founding members of the Galactic Covenant, though our relationship with the other major powers has often been complex." She gestured and the map zoomed in on a region near the galaxy's outer rim, where Earth was located. "Your world is young in interstellar terms. Your species has only achieved faster-than-light travel within the last century. Yet, in that brief time, humans have expanded to 3 star systems and established relations with 17 alien civilizations." "We're quick learners," Adriel said. "Indeed. Perhaps too quick for the comfort of certain established powers." Elira's golden eyes fixed on him with unsettling intensity. The Covenant's designation of Earth as a protected species was not merely altruistic, Commander. It was a means of control limiting your expansion while appearing benevolent. Adriel considered this. Earth's governments had celebrated joining the Covenant and receiving protected species status as diplomatic triumphs. If what Elira suggested was true, they'd been outmaneuvered on a galactic scale. "And where does the Crimson Dominion stand on human expansion?" he asked. "We see opportunity where others see threat." She deactivated the galactic map. "The Dominion has always valued strength adaptation and strategic thinking. While other Covenant members debate how to contain humanity, I have chosen a different approach, which is alliance." She set down her glass and moved closer to him. "Not the public kind, not yet. But the foundations must be laid, connections established. You, Commander Bennett, represent the first such connection." Adriel felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature of the room. "Why me specifically?" "Your neural patterns," she replied. "They exhibit certain characteristics that suggest compatibility with Dominion psychometric technologies. Dr. Alindra confirmed what our intelligence had already indicated. You possess a rare neurological profile." "Compatible for what purpose?" Instead of answering directly, Elira changed tactics. "Are you familiar with the concept of direct neural interface, Commander? Not the rudimentary versions used in Earth military applications, but true mind-to-mind connection." The implication stunned him. "You're suggesting some form of telepathy?" "Nothing so mystical. It is technology, albeit highly advanced. The Dominion has developed methods of neural synchronization that allow for direct transfer of information experiences, even tactical awareness between compatible minds." She watched his reaction carefully. "Such connections are usually only possible between members of the same species. Instances of cross-species compatibility are exceedingly rare." Adriel's mind raced with the implications. If what she was saying was true, it would explain both her interest in him and her willingness to pay such an exorbitant sum. But it also raised disturbing questions about what she intended to do with such a connection. "And if I refuse to participate in these experiments?" Elira's expression hardened slightly. "You misunderstand your position, Commander. While I have granted you the respect of explanation, I have not asked for your consent. You were legally purchased under Covenant law. Your cooperation is preferred but not required." The reminder of his status was like a splash of cold water. Despite the civil conversation and luxurious surroundings, He remained property in the eyes of galactic law. However, she continued, her tone softening, I believe you will come to see the benefits of willing participation. The neural bond works both ways, Commander. Whatever you learn of the Dominion, I would learn of Earth. The strategic value to both our civilizations could be immeasurable. She moved toward the chamber's exit. We will arrive at Serial in 3 days. Consider what I have said. Regardless of your decision, the procedures will begin shortly after our arrival. At the doorway, she paused. Oh, and Commander, that drink you enjoyed contains a mild enzyme that prepares the neural pathways for preliminary synchronization. The process has already begun. With that, she was gone, leaving Adriel alone beneath the streaming lights of hyperspace, the implications of her words echoing in his mind like thunder. The royal palace of Serial rose from the planet's surface like a mountain of crimson crystal and burnished metal. Its spires penetrated the lower atmosphere, visible from orbit, as the royal vessel made its descent. Adriel watched from a viewport in his quarters, mesmerized despite his situation. After Queen Elira's revelation about her plans for him, he had spent the remaining journey days alternating between physical conditioning, meditation techniques, to strengthen his mental barriers, and gathering what intelligence he could from the ship's limited information systems. The landing was so smooth, it was barely perceptible, a testament to the advanced technology of the Dominion. Shortly afterward, Captain Serafina arrived to escort him to the disembarkation area. The Royal Palace will be your home for the foreseeable future, she informed him as they walked. Your quarters have been prepared in the military wing befitting your status as an attaché. And when will these neural synchronization procedures begin? Adriel asked bluntly. If Serafina was surprised by his knowledge, she didn't show it. Her Majesty's schedule will determine the timeline. Until then, you will be integrated into palace protocols and briefed on your duties. The ship's main hatch opened to reveal a grand reception area. A delegation of Dominion officials stood in precise formation, their casts easily identifiable by their varying horn and wing configurations. At their center stood Queen Elira, now adorned in full ceremonial regalia, a suit of armor that seemed to be part metal, part living material, with her vestigial wings enhanced by artificial extensions that created an impressive silhouette. As Adriel descended the ramp alongside Captain Serafina, he noted the barely concealed curiosity in the eyes of the assembled Dominion officials. Most had likely never seen a human in person before. Elira stepped forward. Commander Bennett, welcome to Serial Heart of the Crimson Dominion. May your service bring honor to both our worlds. The formal greeting was clearly for the benefit of the assembled delegation. Adriel recognized the political theater and played his part, bowing slightly. Thank you for your welcome, Your Majesty. I look forward to learning about your world. A tall, austere male Dominion, with elaborate horn ornamentation, stepped forward, his wings larger than most others present. Your Majesty, is it wise to present this acquisition as a diplomatic appointment? The Covenant might view such pretense as provocative. Elira's gaze hardened. Chief Advisor Zorvan, your concerns are noted. However, Commander Bennett's designation falls well within my prerogative as sovereign. The Covenant's interests end where Dominion law begins. Zorvan bowed stiffly. Of course, Your Majesty. I merely counsel caution in matters that might affect interstellar relations. Your counsel is always valued, Chief Advisor. Elira's tone made it clear the discussion was over. She turned to Adriel. You will be shown to your quarters now. Rest and acclimate. Tomorrow your integration begins. As Adriel was led away by a different set of guards, he caught Zorvan watching him with undisguised suspicion. The Chief Advisor's reaction confirmed what Adriel had already surmised. Queen Elira's interest in him was controversial within the Dominion hierarchy. That knowledge might prove useful. His quarters in the palace made the ship accommodations seem austere by comparison. The ceiling soared nearly 30 feet high, with walls of the same crimson crystalline material that composed the palace exterior. The furnishings were scaled for Dominion physiology, but included adaptations for human proportions, a thoughtful touch that surprised him. A balcony offered a breathtaking view of Serial, a city that blended advanced technology with architectural styles reminiscent of Earth's Gothic and Baroque periods, all rendered in the Dominion's signature materials and color palette. Far below, he could see Dominion citizens going about their business, their winged forms creating patterns of movement unlike any human city. For the next 3 days, Adriel was subjected to an intensive integration program. He was briefed on Dominion history, political structure, and cultural protocols. He was fitted for formal attire appropriate to his station. He was introduced to key military officials who regarded him with reactions ranging from curiosity to disdain to guarded respect. Throughout it all, he maintained a careful balance, absorbing information that might be useful looking for potential allies or escape routes, yet presenting himself as compliant enough to avoid restrictions on his limited freedom. On the 4th day, he was summoned to a section of the palace he hadn't yet seen. Captain Serafina escorted him personally. "We are going to the Royal Scientific Division," she explained, as they traversed a series of increasingly secure checkpoints. "Her Majesty awaits you there with Dr. Alindra and the Neural Synchronization Team." Adriel had been preparing himself mentally for this moment, but tension still coiled in his stomach. "What exactly should I expect from this procedure?" Serafina gave him a sidelong glance. "I am not authorized to discuss the specifics, but I can tell you that the process is not intended to be harmful. The Dominion values what you represent too much to risk damage." "That's not particularly reassuring." "It was not intended to be," she replied with unexpected candor. The research division resembled a cross between a medical facility and an advanced technology laboratory. Dominion scientists moved purposefully among equipment that hummed with energy. At the center of the main chamber stood 2 reclined chairs, facing each other surrounded by complex machinery. Queen Elira and Dr. Alindra were conversing quietly when Adriel entered. Both turned to regard him, the Queen with calm authority, the doctor with clinical interest. "Commander Bennett," Elira greeted him. "The time has come to fulfill your primary purpose in the Dominion." "I still have serious reservations about this procedure," Adriel stated firmly. "Neural synchronization sounds dangerously close to mind control." Dr. Alindra stepped forward. "I assure you, Commander, that is not the case. The technology creates a bridge between minds, not dominance of one over the other. Both participants remain autonomous, though they gain access to aspects of the other's knowledge and perception." "Aspects is deliberately vague," Adriel noted. "The connection prioritizes information relevant to both parties." Elira explained, removing her ornate outer robe to reveal a more practical bodysuit beneath. "Military strategy, tactical awareness, cultural context, these transfer most readily. Personal memories and private thoughts require deliberate sharing. They cannot be taken without consent." "So you say." Elira's golden eyes fixed on him. "Your skepticism is understandable but unnecessary. You will experience the truth of my words shortly." She gestured to one of the reclined chairs. "Please." Adriel considered resistance, but recognized the futility of his position. He was surrounded by palace guards and in the heart of Dominion territory. Better to comply and gather intelligence from within the system than force a confrontation he couldn't win. He took his place in the indicated chair, while Queen Elira settled into the one opposite him. Dr. Alindra and her team moved around them, attaching monitoring devices and adjusting equipment. "The initial synchronization will be brief, no more than 5 minutes of subjective time," Dr. Alindra explained, as she placed a delicate circlet of metallic filaments on Adriel's head. "This allows the neural pathways to establish basic connections without risk of overload." "And how many of these sessions are planned?" Adriel asked. "That depends on how well your mind adapts to the process," she replied. Most Dominion subjects require 5 to 7 sessions before achieving stable synchronization. But I'm not Dominion. Precisely why this research is so valuable, Dr. Alindra said, her scientific enthusiasm momentarily overriding her professional detachment. Cross-species neural compatibility has been theorized but rarely documented. A similar circlet was placed on Elira's head, the filaments nestling between her horns. She appeared completely at ease, clearly having undergone this procedure before. "Prepare for initial synchronization," Dr. Alindra announced. "Commencing in 3, 2, 1. The world dissolved around Adriel. One moment he was in the laboratory, the next he was elsewhere. Not physically, he could still dimly sense his body in the chair, but his consciousness had expanded into a space that wasn't space, a realm of pure information and sensation. And he wasn't alone. Elira's presence was unmistakable, a vast and ancient consciousness alongside his own. He felt her surprise at the clarity of the connection, stronger than she had anticipated. Then came information not as words or images, but as direct understanding. Knowledge flowing into his mind about the Dominion, its history, its conflicts with neighboring star empires, its internal power struggles. And in return, he sensed her absorbing information from him. Earth's military structures, the political tensions between colonies, humanity's rapid technological advancement since achieving spaceflight. The experience was neither painful nor pleasant, simply overwhelming in its immediacy. There was no filtering, no contextualizing, just pure information transfer, raw and unprocessed. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, it ended. Adriel gasped as his consciousness slammed back into the singular perspective of his physical body. He felt disoriented, his mind struggling to integrate the flood of new information. Across from him, Queen Elira's eyes snapped open, her pupils dilated. She said something in the Dominion language that the translation devices didn't catch, her voice urgent. Dr. Alindra hurried to check readings on her instruments. "Unprecedented compatibility," she murmured. The neural synchronization achieved 78% coherence on first contact. That exceeds even same-species initial bonding. Elira rose from her chair, removing the neural circlet with practiced ease. "Enough for today. The commander needs time to process." Adriel sat up slowly, his head pounding. What just happened?" "You experienced your first neural synchronization," Elira said, studying him with new interest. "And you performed remarkably well, better than any of our models predicted." He could feel new knowledge settling into his mind, understanding of Dominion culture and politics that he hadn't possessed minutes ago. Most strikingly, he now comprehended the complex caste system based on wing and horn development, and the genetic engineering that had reinforced these traits over millennia of Dominion evolution. "Did you take anything from my mind?" he asked, still disoriented. "Take no, share yes." Elira approached him, her expression inscrutable. "The information flows both ways, Commander. I now understand Earth's military structure and colonial politics far better than any briefing could have provided." Dr. Alindra was reviewing data with barely contained excitement. "Your Majesty, if these readings are accurate, we could achieve full synchronization in as few as 3 sessions. The implications are extraordinary." "Indeed." Elira's gaze remained fixed on Adriel. "You have exceeded expectations, Commander Bennett. Rest now. We will continue tomorrow." As Adriel was escorted back to his quarters by Captain Serafina, his mind churned with the implications of what had just occurred. The neural synchronization had been more profound than he'd expected, and potentially more dangerous. He now possessed knowledge of Dominion matters that would be considered highly classified. But more concerning was what Elira had gained from him. Earth's defenses, colonial vulnerabilities, military protocols, all now known to the Queen of a vast interstellar empire with unknown intentions toward humanity. Yet amid these concerns, something else nagged at him, something he'd glimpsed in the synchronization that didn't align with the official narrative he'd been given. A sense of urgency, even desperation behind Elira's interest in human neural compatibility. This wasn't merely scientific curiosity or strategic advantage. The Queen was searching for something specific, something vital to the Dominion's future. What that might be, he couldn't yet determine. But he was certain of one thing: he was now entangled in galactic politics, far beyond what any human had experienced before. And somewhere in that entanglement might lie his only hope of ever returning home. Over the next week, Adriel underwent 3 more neural synchronization sessions with Queen Elira. Each was longer and more intense than the last, with the final session lasting nearly 30 minutes of subjective time. The information transfer grew more nuanced, less overwhelming but more comprehensive. What surprised Adriel most was that the process wasn't the violation he had feared. Despite his captivity and the involuntary nature of his participation, the neural connection itself maintained boundaries. As Dr. Alindra had claimed, personal memories remained private, unless deliberately shared, and neither party could force access to the other's thoughts. This realization led Adriel to make a calculated decision during the 4th session. He deliberately shared certain memories: his childhood on Earth, his reasons for joining the military, his experiences during the Europa colony insurrection. Not strategic information, but personal context that might humanize him in Elira's perception. In return, he gained glimpses of her own experiences, the immense pressure of ruling the Dominion, the isolation of her position, the constant political maneuvering she navigated. After each session, Adriel found his status in the palace subtly changed. Guards showed him more respect. He was granted increased access to palace facilities. He was even invited to observe a session of the Royal Advisory Council, though he noted that Chief Advisor Zorvan seemed displeased by his presence. 10 days after his arrival on Serial, Adriel was working through a series of Earth combat exercises, adapted for his quarters, when Captain Serafina arrived unexpectedly. "Commander Bennett, your presence is required immediately in the Royal Security Center," she announced, her usual composure noticeably strained. "What's happened?" Adriel asked, instantly alert. "Security protocols forbid discussion outside designated areas," she replied, but added, "Her Majesty has specifically requested your tactical assessment." This was unprecedented. Despite his improving status, Adriel had not yet been invited into actual security operations. They moved quickly through the palace, passing through multiple security checkpoints, before entering a fortified section he hadn't previously accessed. The Royal Security Center resembled an advanced military command post, with holographic displays showing various sectors of the palace and city. Queen Elira stood at the central platform, surrounded by military advisors, including several wearing the distinctive armor of elite Dominion combat units. All turned to look as Adriel entered. "Commander Bennett," Elira acknowledged him with a nod. "Your timing is excellent. We have a situation that may benefit from your perspective." A holographic display activated, showing a 3-dimensional rendering of what appeared to be an explosive device. "This was discovered in the Royal Gardens 17 minutes ago," she explained. "It bears design elements similar to devices used by the Shrike Consortium, but something about the configuration seems inconsistent." Adriel studied the hologram, his military training kicking in automatically. "May I?" he asked, gesturing toward the controls. After a nod from Elira, a security officer stepped aside, allowing Adriel access to the interface. He rotated the image, examining the device from multiple angles. "This isn't Shrike technology," he concluded after a few moments. "The power cell configuration is wrong, and the trigger mechanism is unnecessarily complicated for their usual methodology." He highlighted specific components. "These elements are meant to look like Shrike design, but they're theatrical, not functional." "A false flag operation," Elira said, her expression darkening. "Can you determine the actual origin?" Adriel continued his analysis, zooming in on particular components. "Some of these elements appear similar to Zortanian manufacturing, but modified to hide their source." He looked up at Elira. "Whoever planted this wanted you to blame the Shrike Consortium." "The Zortanians are our most loyal allies," objected one of the military advisors. "They would have no reason to sabotage that relationship." "Perhaps not the Zortanian government," Adriel suggested, "but factions within their territory might have different agendas. Or someone with access to their technology could be attempting to create a triple deception." Elira watched him with intense focus. "Your assessment aligns with my suspicions. The question remains, who benefits from conflict between the Dominion and the Shrike Consortium?" Before Adriel could respond, alarms blared throughout the security center. Displays shifted to show multiple sections of the palace where security personnel were rushing to defensive positions. "Breach in the eastern quadrant," announced a security officer. "Multiple unidentified intruders have penetrated outer defenses." The explosive was a diversion, Adriel realized aloud. It was meant to draw security resources to the gardens, while the actual assault came from another direction. Captain Serafina was already coordinating defensive measures. Her wings flared in a display of aggression that seemed instinctive to her species under threat. "Royal Guard units are responding. Her Majesty should be moved to the secure bunker immediately." "No," Elira countermanded. "I will not hide while my palace is under attack." She turned to Adriel. "Commander, you have combat experience with small unit tactics. What would you recommend in this situation?" It was a test, Adriel realized, not just of his tactical abilities, but of his loyalty. Despite his status as a captive, he was being asked to help defend his captors. Yet, the calculation was simple. Whatever his feelings about his own situation, allowing assassins to succeed would hardly improve it. Split your forces," he advised without hesitation. "The Eastern Breach is likely another diversion. Based on the sophistication of this operation, I'd expect the primary strike team to be approaching through a less obvious vector, possibly from above or below." As if on cue, the floor-to-ceiling windows of the security center itself exploded inward. 5 figures in advanced stealth armor burst through weapons raised. "Protect the Queen!" shouted Captain Serafina, drawing her sidearm and moving to shield Elira. Adriel reacted instinctively. Without conscious thought, he lunged toward the nearest console, grabbed a ceremonial staff that had been mounted on the wall as a military decoration, and positioned himself between the attackers and Queen Elira. The lead assassin fired a weapon that emitted not projectiles, but a wave of crackling energy. Adriel barely managed to deflect it with the staff, which surprisingly absorbed, rather than conducted the energy, evidently more than merely decorative. The security center erupted into chaos. Dominion guards exchanged fire with the attackers, while military advisors either joined the defense or sought cover. Through the tumult, Adriel maintained his position, using the staff with the combat expertise that had made him a commander on Earth. One attacker broke through the defensive line and charged directly at Queen Elira. Adriel intercepted the assassin, striking with precision at joint points in the armor. The attacker stumbled, but continued forward, revealing strength beyond normal parameters. "Augmented combat system," Adriel called out in warning. "Standard tactics won't work." He changed approach, targeting not the assassin's body, but the weapon itself, striking the power coupling with the end of the staff. The weapon overloaded with a shower of sparks, momentarily disorienting its wielder. In that instant of vulnerability, Captain Serafina fired her energy weapon, penetrating the assassin's armor at close range. The remaining attackers, seeing their lead operative fall, initiated what appeared to be an extraction protocol. One through a device that erupted into a blinding flash, combined with a sonic pulse that disoriented the Dominion defenders. When vision and hearing cleared, the surviving assassins had vanished. "Secure the perimeter," Captain Serafina ordered. "All units coordinate pursuit protocols." She turned to Elira, concern evident in her usually stoic features. "Your Majesty, are you injured?" "I am unharmed," Elira replied, her composure remarkable given the circumstances. Her gaze shifted to Adriel, who still held the staff in a defensive posture. "Thanks to Commander Bennett's intervention." Adriel lowered the weapon, suddenly aware of his position. He had just defended the very monarch who held him captive, an instinctive reaction that surprised even himself. Security personnel swarmed the room, securing the fallen assassin and beginning forensic analysis of the attack. Medical staff arrived to treat the wounded, including several guards who had sustained serious injuries. "Take Commander Bennett to my private chambers," Elira instructed Captain Serafina. "I will speak with him there, after I address the advisory council on this matter." As Adriel was escorted from the security center, he caught sight of Chief Advisor Zorvan, watching him with an inscrutable expression. Not the suspicion he had come to expect, but something more calculating. The look lasted only a moment before Zorvan turned his attention to the Queen, already beginning to frame the political narrative of the attack. Queen Elira's private chambers occupied the highest spire of the palace, offering a panoramic view of Syriel and the Crimson Mountains beyond. Unlike the formal, somewhat militaristic design of the rest of the palace, her personal space featured elements of understated elegance artwork from across the galaxy living plants, with bioluminescent properties and furnishings that prioritized comfort over ostentation. Adriel was left under guard to wait. He used the time to process what had just occurred. His defense of Elira had been largely instinctive, the trained response of a soldier to protect a high-value target. Yet it also represented a shift in his own perception. Through the neural synchronization sessions, Elira had become more than simply his captor. He had glimpsed enough of her mind to understand the complexity of her position and the genuine belief she held that her actions served both the Dominion and ultimately Earth as well. After nearly an hour, the chamber doors opened to admit Queen Elira, now changed from her formal court attire into a simpler bodysuit that emphasized her athletic physique. Her vestigial wings remained half-extended, suggesting a state of continued alertness. "Commander Bennett," she acknowledged him, dismissing the guards with a gesture. "Your actions today have given me much to consider." "I acted on instinct," Adriel replied honestly. "Training takes over in crisis situations. Yet your training was to protect Earth's interests, not the Dominion's." She moved to a console, activated a security protocol that presumably prevented surveillance, then poured 2 glasses of the same amber liquid they had shared on her ship. "I suspect we have much to discuss." She offered him one of the glasses, which he accepted after a moment's hesitation. "The assassins," he began. "Have you identified them?" "Preliminary analysis confirms your assessment. They were not Shrike operatives, but mercenaries using modified Zortanian technology." She took a sip from her glass. "What is more interesting is what they targeted, not simply my elimination, but specifically interrupting our neural synchronization research." Adriel's brow furrowed. "How do you know that was their objective?" "Because before attacking the security center, they attempted to breach the research division and destroy the synchronization equipment." Elira's golden eyes fixed on him with uncomfortable intensity. "Someone does not want the Dominion and Earth forming the connection we have begun to establish." The implications cascaded through Adriel's mind. "You're suggesting a third party with interest in keeping our civilizations separate, or at least preventing the particular advantage our neural synchronization might create." She set down her glass and activated a holographic display showing galactic political boundaries. "The Covenant's power balance has remained relatively stable for millennia, Commander. Earth's rapid emergence as a potential new power has created anxiety among the established members." "And your interest in Earth threatens that balance further," Adriel surmised. "Precisely." Elira magnified a section of the display, showing the border regions between Dominion space and neighboring empires. "What I am about to share with you goes beyond what you could have gleaned from our synchronization sessions. It is information I have deliberately withheld until now." The display shifted to show what appeared to be massive construction projects at various points along the Dominion's borders. The Crimson Dominion faces existential threats on multiple fronts. The Myriad Collective to our galactic west has been amassing forces for the past decade. The hegemony of Seven Suns to our north has developed weapons technology that threatens to neutralize our traditional military advantages. And you see Earth as a potential ally against these threats, Adriel said, beginning to understand the larger game at play. More than an ally, Commander. A catalyst. Elira manipulated the display to show a different set of data neural patterns that Adriel recognized as similar to those from their synchronization sessions. The Dominion's strength has always been our unity of purpose, facilitated in part by the neural synchronization technology that allows our military leaders to coordinate with unprecedented efficiency. She continued, but that advantage is fading as our adversaries develop countermeasures. What we discovered in you in the human neural architecture is the potential for a new evolution of that technology, one that our enemies would not anticipate or be prepared to counter. So I'm not just a diplomatic symbol or a scientific curiosity, Adriel concluded. I'm a prototype for a new weapon system. A crude characterization, but not entirely inaccurate. Elira deactivated the display and faced him directly. The neural bridge we are developing could allow human Dominion paired units to operate with tactical coordination beyond anything currently existing in known space. But more importantly, it could serve as the foundation for a genuine alliance between our civilizations, one based on shared consciousness rather than merely shared interests. The scale of her ambition was breathtaking. Not just military cooperation, but a literal meeting of minds between species. The implications were both exhilarating and terrifying. And what happens to me in this grand vision? Adriel asked. Do I remain a captive experimental subject indefinitely? That depends largely on you, Commander. Elira moved closer, her presence commanding even in the informality of her private chambers. Today's events have accelerated matters. The attempt on my life will necessitate a political response. Chief Advisor Zorvan and his conservative faction will demand traditional solutions, military displays, possible preemptive strikes against suspected enemies. But you're considering an alternative, Adriel guessed. Yes, a public demonstration of the human-Dominion connection we've established. Something that would validate my strategic approach while simultaneously advancing our research. Her expression became more intense. It would also elevate your status from property to something more. What kind of demonstration? The right of Kagrath. She watched him closely for reaction. It is an ancient tradition rarely invoked in modern times. A trial of combat that allows challenges to royal policy to be settled through champions rather than civil conflict. Adriel's military training immediately assessed the implications. You want me to fight as your champion? Against a representative of the conservative faction, yes. It would serve multiple purposes, testing the practical applications of our neural synchronization in combat, demonstrating human capabilities to those who dismiss your species as fragile, and consolidating my political position without bloodshed. And if I refuse? Elira's expression hardened slightly. Then we continue as before. You remain legal property, our research proceeds more cautiously, and I face internal challenges that may ultimately lead to conflict anyway. She paused. But I would prefer your willing participation, Commander. The neural synchronization works best with aligned intent. Adriel weighed his options carefully. The offer represented both opportunity and risk. Fighting as Elira's champion would grant him greater agency and potential leverage for improving his situation. It might even create a path toward eventual return to Earth. But it also meant deeper entanglement in Dominion politics and more comprehensive neural bonding with Elira. This combat, what are the rules, the stakes? The right of Kagrath is not to the death, though serious injury is possible, she explained. Victory is achieved by submission or incapacitation. As for stakes, the victor's faction gains precedence in policy decisions for a full orbital cycle, approximately 2 Earth years. And who would I be fighting? A warrior named Kagrath, descendant of the ancient house that established the ritual. He is formidable. Her tone carried genuine concern. Few have defeated him in formal combat. So I'd be fighting an elite warrior from a species physically stronger than humans, on his home territory, under unfamiliar rules. Adriel summarized. Those aren't favorable odds. They are not, Elira agreed candidly. But you would have advantages he does not. Our neural synchronization would give you access to my knowledge of Dominion combat techniques, and Kagrath's specific fighting style. And he will underestimate you as most Dominion citizens underestimate humans. Adriel considered the proposal from all angles. The rational choice might be to refuse to avoid unnecessary risk and maintain his current status quo. But something deeper pulled at him, perhaps an effect of the neural synchronization, or perhaps his own nature. The chance to act rather than merely endure was powerfully compelling. If I agree to this, I want something in return, he said finally. Beyond whatever status change you're offering. Elira tilted her head slightly. What do you propose? If I win, I want formal recognition as Earth's representative to the Dominion, not as property or an experimental subject, but as a legitimate diplomat with communication rights to my government. The Queen considered this for a long moment. The Covenant would object strenuously to such recognition. The Covenant objections didn't stop you from purchasing me at auction, Adriel pointed out. And you've just told me you're willing to challenge the political status quo. A slow smile spread across Elira's face, the most genuine expression of pleasure he'd seen from her. Indeed, I am Commander Bennett. Very well. If you champion my cause successfully in the right of Kagrath, I will grant you diplomatic status and establish communication channels with Earth authorities. She extended her hand in a gesture that seemed deliberately adopted from human custom. Do we have an agreement? Adriel took her hand, noting the strange texture of her skin, smoother than human hide, with a subtle warmth that belied her reptilian appearance. We do, Your Majesty. Excellent. She withdrew her hand and moved to a communicator panel. Captain Serafina implements security protocol Ember Rising and inform Dr. Alindra that we will require an accelerated final synchronization session immediately. She turned back to Adriel, her expression now all business. The rite of Kagrath will commence at dawn tomorrow. We have much to prepare. The preparation for the rite of Kagrath was intensive and multifaceted. First came the final neural synchronization session, longer and deeper than any previous connection. For nearly 2 hours, Adriel's mind meshed with Elira's absorbing centuries of Dominion combat traditions, the specific rituals of the rite, and detailed knowledge of Kagrath's fighting style. The physical preparation was equally demanding. Dr. Alindra supervised a regimen of injections designed to temporarily enhance Adriel's endurance and reaction time. Within human physiological parameters, she assured him, though he noted she avoided specifics about long-term effects. He was fitted with combat attire that merged Dominion design with accommodations for human physiology. The material was lighter than it appeared, offering protection while maximizing mobility. Captain Serafina personally oversaw his equipment check, her professional demeanor, unable to completely hide her skepticism about his chances. Kagrath has never been defeated in formal combat, she told him, as she adjusted the fit of his armor. His family has provided the royal house with champions for 17 generations. There's a first time for everything, Adriel replied, with more confidence than he felt. The night passed in a blur of preparation and strategy sessions. By the time dawn approached, Adriel felt simultaneously exhausted and hyper-alert, his mind racing with combat scenarios and Dominion fighting techniques that had been foreign to him just hours earlier. The arena for the rite of Kagrath occupied a massive courtyard at the heart of the royal palace. Unlike the high-tech environments of the rest of the complex, this space preserved ancient traditions, a circular combat ring surrounded by stone terraces, where spectators could observe from all angles. The only concessions to modernity were subtle force field generators that would prevent combat from spilling into the audience and medical stations positioned discreetly at the perimeter. As Adriel was led to the entrance tunnel, Queen Elira approached for a final word. She was resplendent in formal regalia, her vestigial wings enhanced with ceremonial extensions that created an imposing silhouette. "Remember what we discussed," she said, her voice low and intense. "Kagrath fights with traditional techniques, powerful, but predictable to those who know their patterns. Use your human adaptability. Be unpredictable. And our connection, will it remain active during the combat?" "Yes, though less intensely than during the synchronization sessions. You will have access to my knowledge, but you must execute the physical actions yourself." She placed a hand briefly on his shoulder, an unusually personal gesture for her. "Fight well, Commander. Much depends on the outcome." With that, she departed to take her place in the royal observation box. Minutes later, ceremonial horns announced the commencement of the rite. Adriel stepped out into the arena, to a ripple of murmurs from the assembled Dominion elite. The terraces were filled with high-ranking officials, military leaders, and noble houses, all here to witness what had become far more than a simple ritual combat. This was a pivotal moment in Dominion politics, with implications for interstellar relations beyond. From the opposite entrance emerged Kagrath. If Adriel had harbored any hopes that his opponent might be less intimidating than described, they evaporated instantly. Kagrath stood nearly 8 feet tall, his wings fully developed rather than vestigial, his horns elaborate and unadorned by artificial enhancement, the mark of a pure bloodline. His musculature was evident even beneath the traditional armor he wore. The two combatants approached the center of the arena, where an elderly Dominion, with elaborately curled horns, waited to officiate. The Rite of Kagrath. The elder intoned, "Sacred tradition of the Crimson Dominion, today determines the path our civilization shall follow." He turned to Kagrath. "Does the House of Ancient Valor stand ready to defend traditional ways?" Kagrath inclined his head, horns gleaming in the morning light. "It does, Elder. I stand for the wisdom of our ancestors and the purity of Dominion sovereignty." The elder turned to Adriel. "And does the champion of Queen Elira stand ready to prove the worth of new alliances?" "I do," Adriel replied, his voice carrying clearly across the hushed arena. "Then let combat commence when the Crimson Star reaches the ceremonial spire," the elder declared, gesturing to where the system's red sun was climbing toward a needle-like projection at the arena's edge. "May honor prevail." The elder withdrew, leaving Adriel and Kagrath facing each other at the center of the combat ring. Kagrath spoke in a low voice, meant only for Adriel's ears. "Your presence here dishonors ancient tradition, human. Queen Elira's fascination with your kind threatens the purity of the Dominion. Yet here I stand," Adriel replied calmly, "ready to prove that strength comes in many forms." Kagrath's expression hardened. "We shall see what forms you take when broken." Before Adriel could respond, a beam of crimson light struck the ceremonial spire, reflecting across the arena in a spectacular display. The crowd roared and Kagrath launched himself forward with startling speed. The first exchange was brutal and direct. Kagrath attacked with a series of powerful strikes, aimed at overwhelming Adriel immediately, a strategy likely intended to confirm the prevailing belief in human fragility. Adriel evaded, rather than blocked, using his smaller size as an advantage to slip past the Dominion warrior's guard. He landed a precise counterstrike to a nerve cluster below Kagrath's right-wing knowledge gained from the neural synchronization with Elira. The Dominion champion faltered momentarily, surprise evident in his expression. Clearly, he hadn't expected a human to possess such specific knowledge of Dominion physiology. The crowd's reaction shifted from dismissive murmurs to more attentive observation. In the royal box, Queen Elira watched with intense focus, while beside her chief advisor, Zorvan's expression darkened with concern. Kagrath adjusted his approach, becoming more cautious. "You have been well-coached, human, but knowing where to strike is not the same as having the strength to make it matter." He unfurled his wings to their full span, not for flight in the gravity-controlled arena, but as part of a traditional Dominion fighting style that used the appendages as both weapons and shields. The technique was called Crimson Embrace. Adriel knew from his connection with a lyra designed to envelop opponents and crush them within the powerful musculature of the wings. Adriel responded with a tactic no Dominion would have employed. He charged directly toward Kagrath, rather than retreating from the wing display. The unexpected aggression momentarily disrupted the champion's rhythm, allowing Adriel to strike at the base of Kagrath's left horn, another vulnerable point in Dominion physiology. Pain and rage flashed across Kagrath's features. A horn strike was considered deeply personal in Dominion culture, bordering on dishonorable. The crowd gasped at the audacity. "You will pay for that insult," Kagrath growled, abandoning the more ceremonial aspects of traditional combat for direct aggression. What followed was an intense exchange of strikes, blocks, and counters. Kagrath possessed overwhelming physical advantage, but Adriel's human reflexes, enhanced by Dr. Alindra's treatments, allowed him to evade the most devastating blows. When he did take hits, the specially designed armor absorbed much of the impact. As the combat extended past the 5-minute mark, murmurs of astonishment rippled through the audience. Most had expected the human to fall within moments of the first engagement. That he continued to fight, even landing effective strikes of his own, was unprecedented. In Adriel's mind, the neural connection with Lyra provided constant tactical insights. Not direct communication, but an intuitive sense of Kagrath's patterns and vulnerabilities. He found himself anticipating moves seconds before they came, recognizing feints for what they were, identifying the subtle tells in Dominion body language that preceded major attacks. 10 minutes into the combat, both combatants showed signs of fatigue. Kagrath's breathing had become more labored, his attacks slightly less precise. Adriel felt his own muscles burning with exertion, the enhanced endurance from Dr. Alindra's treatments beginning to reach its limits. "You fight well, for a human," Kagrath acknowledged during a momentary respite as they circled each other. "But you cannot win. The Dominion does not yield to lesser species." "This isn't about species," Adriel replied, maintaining his guard. "It's about adaptation versus stagnation. The universe doesn't care about tradition, only survival." Kagrath's eyes narrowed. "Spoken like a creature from a world that has known civilization for mere moments. The Dominion has endured for millennia because of our traditions." He launched into a complex attack sequence that Adriel recognized from Lyra's memories as the 16 Strikes of Dominance, a technique that had traditionally signaled the end of ceremonial combat. No opponent had ever remained standing after its completion. Adriel knew he couldn't match Kagrath's strength or withstand the full sequence. Instead, he drew on something unique to human combat experience: improvisation. Rather than defending against each strike in the expected manner, he deliberately took a glancing blow to create an opening, then executed a sweeping leg strike borrowed from Earth martial arts, a technique entirely foreign to Dominion combat traditions. Kagrath, unprepared for the unfamiliar attack, lost his balance momentarily. In that crucial second, Adriel pressed his advantage, striking at a sequence of nerve clusters along the Dominion's spine, points Lyra's knowledge identified as particularly vulnerable. Kagrath recovered quickly, but something had changed in his demeanor. For the first time, uncertainty flickered in his eyes. He had expected to face a weaker opponent, schooled in Dominion techniques. Instead, he confronted something his training hadn't prepared him for: an unpredictable hybrid fighting style, merging Dominion knowledge with human adaptability. The combat entered its 15th minute, long past when most had expected it to conclude. In the royal box, Queen Lyra remained outwardly composed, but through their neural link, Adriel sensed her growing concern. The battle had continued longer than anticipated, and the strain on his human physiology was becoming critical. Kagrath, sensing Adriel's fatigue, pressed his advantage with renewed vigor. A powerful wing strike caught Adriel in the chest, sending him sprawling across the arena floor. The crowd surged to their feet, expecting the human champion to submit. Instead, Adriel rolled to a defensive position, gathering himself for what he knew must be a decisive gambit. His body was reaching its limits, and Kagrath, despite his own fatigue, retained significant reserves of strength. As Kagrath advanced for what he clearly intended to be the final engagement, Adriel made his decision. Instead of the defensive posture expected of a weakened opponent, he adopted the stance of Serial's Mercy, one of the most ancient and sacred forms in Dominion combat tradition. The stance was not aggressive, but represented an honorable acknowledgement of a superior opponent, while refusing to yield. It was rarely seen in modern combat, preserved mainly in historical texts and ceremonial demonstrations. Kagrath hesitated, visibly startled by the human's knowledge and use of this revered form. The crowd fell silent, even Chief Advisor Zorvan leaning forward in shocked attention. Utilizing that moment of hesitation, Adriel spoke clearly, his voice carrying across the hushed arena. "I acknowledge your strength, Kagrath of the ancient house. But today, I fight not just for myself, or even Queen Elira, but for the future of two civilizations." He shifted the stance subtly, incorporating elements of his Earth combat training into the traditional form, creating something new, yet respectful of the old. True strength lies not in rigid adherence to tradition, but in the wisdom to adapt when necessary. Kagrath's expression reflected internal conflict. The human before him had demonstrated not only unexpected physical resilience, but a deep respect for Dominion culture, while simultaneously challenging its limitations. The Dominion champion made his decision. He attacked, but not with the killing strike many expected. Instead, he engaged in a more measured assault, testing Adriel's adapted stance with increasing complexity. What followed was less a brutal combat than a physical dialogue, each combatant demonstrating mastery while acknowledging the other's skill. The audience watched in fascinated silence as traditional Dominion techniques flowed into human adaptations and back again, creating something entirely new in the sacred arena. After several exchanges, Adriel saw his opportunity. Kagrath had settled into a pattern, expecting countermoves within a certain range of possibilities. Using the last reserves of his strength, Adriel executed a maneuver that no Dominion would have attempted, a sacrifice throw that deliberately exposed his own vulnerability to create a decisive opening. His timing was perfect. Kagrath, committed to his attack, couldn't adjust in time. Adriel's counterstrike landed precisely on the convergence of nerve pathways at the base of the Dominion's wings, what Elira's knowledge identified as the focal point of strength and balance in their physiology. Kagrath froze, his body locked in temporary paralysis from the precision strike. He swayed, struggling against the neurological disruption, then slowly sank to one knee. The arena erupted in astonished exclamations. No one had anticipated this outcome, a human not only surviving against the legendary champion, but forcing him into a position of submission. For a tense moment, the outcome hung in the balance. Tradition demanded that Kagrath acknowledge defeat, but pride and centuries of Dominion supremacy pulled against that requirement. Their eyes met across the small distance that separated them, one standing though exhausted, one kneeling though still powerful. In that moment, something passed between them that transcended combat, a recognition of mutual respect. Kagrath raised his hand in the ancient gesture of submission. "The contest is decided," he announced, his voice carrying clearly despite his position. "The champion of Queen Elira has proven his worth through skill and honor." The elder officiator stepped forward, visibly stunned, but composing himself quickly to uphold the sacred traditions. "The rite of Kagrath is complete. Honor is satisfied. The path chosen by Her Majesty Queen Elira shall guide the Dominion for the ordained cycle." Queen Elira rose from her seat, her expression carefully controlled, despite the triumph this represented. Chief Advisor Zorvan and the conservative faction had no choice but to acknowledge the outcome, though their expressions revealed their dismay. As tradition required, Adriel extended his hand to his fallen opponent. After a moment's hesitation, Kagrath accepted the gesture, allowing himself to be helped to his feet. "You fought with honor and wisdom, human," he said quietly. "Few have ever surprised me in combat." "Your skill is everything they said it would be," Adriel replied with genuine respect. "I won by adaptation, not superiority." Kagrath considered this, then nodded slowly. "Perhaps there is wisdom in that distinction." Medical teams approached to attend both combatants. As Queen Elira descended from the royal box, her ceremonial wings and robes, creating a spectacular vision that commanded the attention of all present. "The right has spoken," she declared, her voice resonating with authority. "The Crimson Dominion shall pursue the path of new alliance and adaptation. Let all bear witness to the strength found in diversity." Her gaze met Adriel's, and through their neural connection, he felt something unexpected, not merely satisfaction at the political victory, but genuine pride in his achievement and a growing respect that transcended her original evaluation of him as a strategic asset. As he was led from the arena for medical treatment, surrounded by royal guards who now regarded him with open amazement, rather than barely concealed disdain, Adriel reflected on how dramatically his circumstances had changed in the span of a single combat. He had entered the arena as property, albeit valuable property. He would leave it as something unprecedented, a human who had earned respect in the heart of an alien empire. What remained to be seen was whether Queen Elira would honor the private agreement they had made, and what consequences might follow when Earth learned of his new status in the Dominion. The days following the Rite of Kagrath brought dramatic changes to Adriel's situation. As promised, Queen Elira granted him the status of Earth's diplomatic representative to the Crimson Dominion, a designation that effectively freed him from property status under Covenant law. He was relocated from his quarters in the military wing to a diplomatic residence within the palace, complete with staff and resources befitting his new position. More significantly, he was granted access to communication technology that would allow direct contact with Earth authorities, though this privilege would be exercised under controlled conditions to prevent what Elira termed premature disclosure of our evolving relationship. The political repercussions of his victory in the Rite were immediate and far-reaching. Chief Advisor Zorvan and his conservative faction were forced to publicly support the Queen's policy direction, though Adriel noted their compliance seemed grudging at best. The broader court began treating him with a mixture of curiosity and cautious respect, particularly after Kagrath himself acknowledged Adriel's combat prowess during a formal banquet celebrating the conclusion of the Rite. 10 days after the combat, Adriel was summoned to a previously restricted section of the Royal Scientific Division. Dr. Alindra greeted him with uncharacteristic enthusiasm. "Commander Bennett, or should I say Ambassador Bennett now, your victory in the Rite has accelerated our research timetable considerably. The successful neural synchronization under combat conditions provided invaluable data. The laboratory had been expanded with new equipment installed alongside the familiar neural synchronization chairs. Technicians moved purposefully among the stations, preparing for something significant." "What exactly is happening here?" Adriel asked, taking in the increased activity. "The next phase of the project," Dr. Alindra explained, leading him deeper into the facility. "Her Majesty will explain the details." They found Queen Elira in a conference area, reviewing holographic displays with several senior scientists. She dismissed them with a gesture when she noticed Adriel's arrival. "Commander, or perhaps I should begin using your diplomatic title," she greeted him. "Adriel will suffice in private settings," he replied. "The diplomatic formalities seem unnecessary between us after sharing neural space." She nodded, a slight smile, acknowledging the truth of his statement. "Very well, Adriel. I've asked you here because we've reached a critical juncture in our research. The data from our synchronization during the Rite proved more valuable than anticipated." She activated a holographic display showing complex neural patterns. Some he recognized as his own from previous scans, others clearly Dominion in structure. "Our scientists have identified the mechanism that allows cross-species neural compatibility," It appears to be a previously undocumented feature of human neuroplasticity combined with specific resonance patterns in Dominion neural architecture. Which means what exactly? It means we can potentially expand the synchronization beyond just you and me. Elira manipulated the display to show multiple paired patterns. Selected human Dominion pairs with compatible neural signatures could establish similar connections, creating the foundation for the alliance I've envisioned. The implications were enormous. You're talking about a fundamental change in species interaction, not just diplomatic relations, but actual shared consciousness. Precisely. Elira's expression was intense with conviction. Imagine military units with perfect tactical coordination. Scientific teams sharing insights directly, mind to mind. Cultural understanding not filtered through imperfect translation, but experienced directly. And Earth has agreed to this, Adriel asked skeptically. That is where your new diplomatic status becomes crucial, she admitted. As Earth's representative, you can open formal negotiations for a controlled trial program. Your personal experience with the process makes you uniquely qualified to explain both benefits and limitations. Adriel considered the proposal carefully. The potential benefits were undeniable. Earth gaining a powerful ally in galactic politics, access to advanced Dominion technology protection against potential threats. But the risks were equally significant. The possibility of exploitation, unforeseen consequences of neural linking across species, disruption of human society. Before I can represent Earth in such negotiations, I need to fully understand what I'd be proposing, he said finally. What safeguards would exist? How reversible is the process? What limits would be placed on information sharing? All reasonable questions, Elira acknowledged. Dr. Alindra has prepared a comprehensive briefing on the technical aspects. As for policy matters, she paused, seeming to reach a decision. I believe it's time you were introduced to the full scope of what we face. She activated a security protocol on her communicator. Captain Serafina, implement clearance upgrade Astral Prime for Ambassador Bennett. Minutes later, they were joined by Captain Serafina and a senior military officer Adriel hadn't met before, General Thalassius, commander of the Dominion's elite vanguard forces. The general's wings were battle-scarred but impressive, his horns adorned with metallic bands, signifying combat victories. Ambassador Bennett, he acknowledged gruffly. Your performance in the rite was educational for many of us. Thank you, General, Adriel replied. Though I suspect you didn't come here to discuss combat techniques. No. The general activated a secure holographic display. I'm here to brief you on the strategic situation that necessitates our proposed alliance. The display showed a region of space beyond Dominion borders, where massive fleet movements were highlighted in ominous patterns. The Myriad Collective has been systematically testing our defensive capabilities for the past 5 years. Their technological development has accelerated beyond previous projections, particularly in the realm of psychic warfare. Psychic warfare? Adriel questioned. A crude translation, Captain Serafina clarified. They've developed weapons that target neural networks, specifically disabling Dominion neural synchronization and potentially causing permanent damage to our linked command structures. General Thalassius continued. Our intelligence suggests they're 3 to 5 years from launching a full-scale offensive. The hegemony of Seven Suns appears to be coordinating with them, creating a potential two-front conflict that would stretch our resources beyond sustainable limits. And how does Earth factor into this equation? Adriel asked, though he was beginning to see the outline. Human neural architecture is fundamentally different, Elira explained. The Myriad's weapons are specifically calibrated for Dominion neural patterns. The human-Dominion synchronization we've developed creates a hybrid pattern their weapons cannot effectively target. You're suggesting using humans as a biological countermeasure. Adriel said, the military implications clear. As part of a mutually beneficial alliance, Elira emphasized. Earth gains protection against emerging threats to your own expansion, access to advanced technologies, and a powerful voice in Covenant politics. The Dominion gains a critical strategic advantage and fresh perspective that centuries of tradition had begun to obscure. General Thalassius added, "If the Dominion falls to the myriad Earth, would eventually face them alone without the benefits of our experience or technology. Your world's isolation would become a vulnerability rather than protection." It was a compelling argument Adriel had to admit. Earth's rapid expansion had already drawn attention in galactic politics. Without allies, humanity would be vulnerable to the same forces, now threatening the Dominion. Yet questions remained. These neural weapons, could they be adapted to target human patterns as well? Eventually, perhaps, Dr. Alindra acknowledged. But the hybrid synchronization creates patterns so complex that adaptation would require years of research. By then, our combined scientific resources could develop countermeasures. And what of the Covenant? Adriel asked. How would they react to a human-Dominion alliance? With concern, certainly, Elira replied. Possibly with sanctions or diplomatic pressure. But the Covenant's founding principles include the right of sovereign civilizations to form alliances. They cannot legally prevent it, only attempt to influence the terms. Adriel absorbed the information, his tactical mind processing implications and possibilities. The situation was more complex than he had initially understood, not simply a matter of his personal circumstances, or even bilateral relations between Earth and the Dominion, but a potential reshaping of galactic power structures. "I need time to consider this," he said finally. "And I'll need to communicate with Earth authorities. They deserve to know the full situation before any formal negotiations begin." "Agreed," Elira said, surprising him with her ready acceptance. "We've prepared a secure communication channel. You may present the situation as you see fit, though. I would ask that certain technical details of the neural synchronization remain confidential for now." "How much time do I have for a decision?" "The Myriad doesn't operate on our schedule," General Thalassius said grimly. "But realistically, establishing an effective alliance would require months of preparation. We need your initial decision within days, not weeks." "You'll have it," Adriel promised. As the meeting concluded, Elira asked him to remain behind. When they were alone, her formal demeanor softened slightly. "There's one other matter we should discuss, Adriel." She seemed uncharacteristically hesitant. The most effective neural synchronization occurs between pairs with not just technical compatibility, but personal affinity. "I'm aware," he replied, recalling how their connection had strengthened over their sessions. "What you may not be aware of is that in Dominion culture, synchronized pairs often form stronger bonds than merely professional ones. The sharing of consciousness creates connections that transcend ordinary relationships." The implication was clear and somewhat startling. "Are you suggesting a personal relationship beyond our professional roles?" "I am suggesting that it may develop naturally as a consequence of our continued synchronization," she clarified, "and that such development would be considered normal and even expected in Dominion society." This was an aspect of neural synchronization that hadn't been covered in his briefings. The idea of a deeper personal connection with Elira, a being from another species, a monarch of an interstellar empire, his former owner, was complicated to say the least. Yet he couldn't deny that their shared mental experiences had created a unique understanding between them. He had glimpsed aspects of her that few others ever saw: her determination, her strategic brilliance, her genuine belief that her actions served her people's best interests. And she had seen him with equal clarity: his sense of duty, his adaptability, his commitment to principles, even in captivity. "I'll keep that in mind," he said carefully. "Though Earth doesn't have cultural precedents for consciousness-sharing relationships. Most relationships across the galaxy lack precedent when first encountered," she observed. "They must be defined by those experiencing them." With that philosophical point, she left him to consider not only the strategic implications of the proposed alliance, but also the personal dimensions of his unique position between worlds. The secure communication with Earth took place the following day, in a specially prepared chamber deep within the palace. Advanced encryption and quantum protocols ensured the conversation couldn't be intercepted by unauthorized parties, including Adriel, noted other factions within the Dominion itself. His message was received by General Harrington, his former commanding officer, and now head of Earth's Interstellar Security Council. The general's shock at seeing Adriel alive, much less speaking from the royal palace of the Crimson Dominion, was evident even through the quantum-delayed transmission. "Commander Bennett," Harrington said, his voice tight with controlled emotion. "You've been listed as missing in action for nearly 3 months. Finding you not only alive, but apparently serving as, what exactly, an ambassador to the Dominion." Adriel explained his journey: the capture, the auction, the neural synchronization experiments, and finally, the right of Kagrath that had elevated his status. He outlined Queen Elira's proposal for an alliance based on human-Dominion neural compatibility, including the strategic threat posed by the Myriad Collective. Harrington listened with growing concern. "This is unprecedented, Commander. You're suggesting we enter an alliance based on literal mind-melding with an empire that until now has shown minimal interest in Earth affairs." "I'm suggesting we consider the possibility," Adriel clarified. "The strategic benefits could be substantial, but I share your concerns about potential risks." A lengthy discussion followed, with additional Earth officials joining the call as its significance became clear. Questions ranged from technical details of neural synchronization to diplomatic implications of challenging Covenant norms. "We'll need to convene an emergency session of the Security Council," Harrington concluded. "This goes beyond military considerations into fundamental questions of human autonomy and interspecies relations." He fixed Adriel with a penetrating look. "Your unique position makes your assessment critical, Commander. Do you trust Queen Elira's intentions?" It was the essential question one Adriel had been pondering since his first neural synchronization session. The answer came with more certainty than he might have expected months ago. "I do," he said. "Not uncritically, but fundamentally. Our mental connection has given me insights into her thinking that would be impossible otherwise. She genuinely believes this alliance serves both our civilization's interests. And the neural synchronization itself, you don't find it violating?" "It's profound," Adriel admitted. "Unlike anything in human experience. But it's not the loss of self I initially feared. It's more like expanded awareness with maintained individuality." "Very well." Harrington straightened, decision made. "I'll convene the council immediately. We'll require a formal diplomatic mission to the Dominion to verify your assessment and begin preliminary negotiations. In the meantime, you're officially recognized as Earth's interim representative with all authorities that entails." "Thank you, General." "And Bennett." Harrington's expression softened slightly. "Good work staying alive in an impossible situation. Whatever comes of these negotiations, you've served Earth with distinction." The transmission ended, leaving Adriel with mixed emotions. Relief at reconnecting with Earth, satisfaction at having his diplomatic status officially confirmed, but also awareness that he now straddled two worlds in a way few humans ever had. His loyalties remained with Earth, yet his unique connection to Elira and the Dominion created complex new dimensions to consider. When he reported the outcome to Queen Elira, her reaction was measured satisfaction. "An official diplomatic mission is a reasonable response. We will prepare suitable accommodations and briefing materials." "They'll want independent verification of everything I've told them," Adriel warned. "Particularly regarding the Myriad threat and the neural synchronization technology." "Of course. Within security parameters, they will be granted access to our intelligence and research." She studied him with her penetrating gaze. "How does it feel to reclaim your connection to Earth?" "Like recovering a part of myself," he admitted. "Though I find myself in an unusual position, understanding both Earth's caution and the Dominion's urgency." "The neural synchronization has given you a perspective few will ever share," she observed. "That perspective may prove crucial in the days ahead." Events moved rapidly after that. The Earth diplomatic mission arrived within 2 weeks, a testament to the seriousness with which the Security Council viewed the situation. Ambassador Kwan led the delegation accompanied by scientific experts, military analysts, and diplomatic staff. Their initial skepticism was evident, particularly regarding neural synchronization technology. However, carefully controlled demonstrations, including limited synchronization experiences for volunteers from the Earth delegation, began to shift their perspective. The myriad threat was harder to verify independently, but intercepted communications and intelligence reports eventually convinced even the most doubtful analysts. Throughout the negotiations, Adriel found himself in the unique position of facilitating understanding between species, not just translating words, but contextualizing cultural assumptions and historical perspectives that shaped each side's approach. His continued neural synchronization with Queen Elira gave him insights into Dominion, thinking that proved invaluable in navigating complex diplomatic territory. Chief Advisor Zorvan and his conservative faction maintained their opposition, but were constrained by the outcomes of the Rite of Kagrath. Instead of direct obstruction, they focused on ensuring the alliance contained provisions protecting traditional Dominion sovereignty concerns that actually aligned with similar Earth priorities regarding autonomy. Dr. Alindra continued refining the neural synchronization technology, identifying additional compatible human-Dominion pairs among volunteers from both species. Each successful pairing strengthened the case for the alliance while providing data to improve the process. 3 months after the Earth delegation's arrival, a formal treaty was signed in a ceremony broadcast across both civilizations. The Human-Dominion Strategic Alliance established protocols for military cooperation, scientific exchange, cultural interaction, and most controversially within the Covenant, limited neural synchronization between compatible individuals from both species. The Covenant Council responded with diplomatic protests, but stopped short of sanctions, recognizing that the alliance fell within sovereign rights despite challenging established norms. Other major powers adopted wait-and-see approaches, their reactions ranging from cautious interest to alarmed preparation. The Myriad Collective, confronted with the unexpected alliance, temporarily scaled back its border probing, while presumably reassessing its strategic position. Intelligence suggested their weapons development programs had shifted focus toward countering the hybrid neural patterns, a task that would require years of research. 6 months after the treaty signing, a new wing of the Royal Palace was dedicated as the permanent Earth Embassy to the Crimson Dominion. Ambassador Kwan took up residence as Earth's official representative, while Adriel received a new designation, Special Liaison for Neural Synchronization Development. His unique status as the first human to successfully synchronize with a Dominion mind made him invaluable to the growing program. Dozens of compatible pairs had been identified and begun training, forming the core of what would eventually become integrated military and scientific teams. Throughout these developments, Adriel's personal relationship with Queen Elira evolved in ways neither could have anticipated. Their continued neural synchronization created a bond that transcended conventional categories, not merely professional or even friendly, but something for which neither human nor Dominion language had adequate terms. Their shared mental experiences had forged a connection based on profound, mutual understanding. Elira had witnessed Adriel's memories of Earth, felt the warmth of a summer day, tasted the salt of ocean spray, experienced the complex emotions of human family bonds. Adriel had glimpsed the weight of millennia of Dominion tradition, the isolation of supreme authority, the fierce determination to protect her civilization against emerging threats. One evening, as they concluded a synchronization session focused on integrating the latest paired teams, Elira addressed the unspoken dimension of their relationship. Dominion tradition offers a designation for what we have become to each other, she said, her voice unusually hesitant. Serial Kareth minds that have walked together across the boundary of self. Earth doesn't have an equivalent concept, Adriel admitted. The closest might be kindred spirits, but that doesn't capture the neural dimension. Does your culture require a name for something to recognize its reality? She asked. No, he said after a moment's reflection. Though names make it easier to integrate new concepts into existing frameworks. Elira considered this. Integration without loss of identity, an apt metaphor for what we've created between our civilizations. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from Captain Serafina. Your Majesty Ambassador Quan requests an immediate audience. Earth long-range sensors have detected unusual activity in the Proxima system. Earth's newest colony, Adriel realized. Still being established vulnerable. We'll meet them in the Strategic Command Center, he responded, already moving toward the door alongside Elira. The development proved to be the first test of the Alliance, a probe force from the hegemony of Seven Suns, likely testing Earth's defenses while assessing Dominion response capabilities. The coordinated reaction demonstrated the potential of neural synchronization in military applications as human Dominion paired teams coordinated defensive operations with unprecedented efficiency. The probe was repelled without casualties on either side, sending a clear message about the effectiveness of the new alliance. Analysis suggested the hegemony had expected to encounter standard Earth defenses, not an integrated human Dominion response. In the aftermath, as the strategic teams reviewed the operation's success, Chief Advisor Zorvan approached Adriel in a rare moment of direct acknowledgement. "It appears your presence has brought unexpected benefits to the Dominion," he said, his traditional disdain noticeably tempered. "Perhaps there is wisdom in Queen Elira's vision after all." "The benefits go both ways," Adriel pointed out. "Earth gains security and knowledge. The Dominion gains adaptability and fresh perspective." Zorvan considered this. "You have earned your place here, human. Few of us expected that outcome when you first arrived." It was as close to acceptance as the traditionalist was likely to offer. Adriel recognized the significance of the gesture, not just personal recognition, but symbolic acknowledgement of the Alliance's value. 1 year after his arrival on Serial, a date that had once marked his captivity, but now symbolized transformation, Adriel stood on the balcony of his diplomatic quarters, watching the twin moons rise over the crimson landscape. Queen Elira joined him there, having shed the formal regalia of state for simpler attire. "Reflective thoughts?" she asked, sensing his mood. "A year ago, I was cargo being auctioned to the highest bidder," he observed. "Now I'm helping shape an alliance that might redefine galactic politics. The universe unfolds in unexpected patterns," she said. "Even for one who has ruled as long as I have. Do you ever regret your decision, paying 10 million credits for a fragile human that no one else wanted?" She laughed, a sound that had once been rare, but had become more frequent in recent months. "Best investment of my reign, I would say." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the moons climb higher. Through their neural connection, they shared the moment without words, her appreciation of her world's beauty, merging with his still fresh wonder at alien skies. "The Earth says a traditional diplomatic joining ceremony would strengthen the alliance," Elira mentioned casually, though Adriel could sense the deliberate nature of the comment. "Ambassador Quan has suggested it would symbolize the permanent nature of our civilization's commitment." "A diplomatic marriage," Adriel translated, turning to face her. "That's what they're suggesting. In essence, though I believe our connection already transcends such formalities." It was true. Their neural synchronization had created a bond deeper than any ceremonial union could establish. Yet the symbolic power of such a step was undeniable, not just for their respective civilizations, but for the galaxy at large. "I doubt this was what Trader Moores had in mind when he put me on the auction block," Adriel remarked with ironic humor. "I doubt he thought beyond his profit margin," Elira replied. Short-sighted thinking typical of those who fail to see larger patterns. "And did you foresee this outcome when you offered 10 million credits?" "I saw potential," she admitted. "Multiple possibilities that might serve the Dominion's interests. But this specific path, no. Some journeys cannot be mapped before they're undertaken." Adriel thought of the strange trajectory that had brought him here, from captive to consort, from military commander to diplomatic liaison, from human among humans to bridge between species. None of it could have been predicted yet. Each step had followed logically from the ones before. "I would be honored to formalize our connection," he said finally, "though I suspect the neural synchronization will always remain the true foundation of what we've built." "As it should be." Elira's expression softened into a smile. "A meeting of minds first, with all else following naturally." The formal union of Queen Elira and Ambassador Adriel Bennett took place 3 months later in a ceremony that combined Dominion traditions with Earth diplomatic protocols. Representatives from both civilizations attended, along with observers from the Covenant Council and various galactic powers. For many of the attendees, it was their first direct observation of the Human-Dominion alliance in action. The synchronized pairs, serving as honor guards, demonstrated the seamless coordination that neural connection enabled. Scientific presentations highlighted the breakthroughs already achieved through combined research efforts. Cultural exchanges showcased the beginnings of genuine understanding between species once separated by vast gulfs of experience and perception. Trader Moores requested permission to attend, undoubtedly, hoping to capitalize on his role in bringing Adriel to the Dominion. His request was politely denied. As Adriel and Elira completed the ceremonial binding, a complex ritual involving both physical gestures and synchronized neural patterns, he reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought him to this moment. What had begun as a personal tragedy, his capture and sale had transformed into something with galactic implications. The alliance he had helped forge would reshape interstellar politics for generations, creating new possibilities for cooperation across species boundaries. Later, in a quiet moment away from the ceremonial festivities, Dr. Alindra approached with news that added yet another dimension to the day's significance. "The latest research confirms it," she told them, barely containing her scientific excitement. "The neural synchronization adaptation appears to enhance genetic compatibility as well. Theoretical models suggest viable cross-species reproduction might be possible with appropriate medical support." The implication was clear. The alliance could potentially extend beyond the current generation to create a literal merging of bloodlines. Descendants who would embody the connection between human and Dominion in their very DNA. "That possibility will require careful consideration," Elira responded, though Adriel could sense her interest through their link. "For now, we focus on consolidating what we've already achieved." As the celebration continued around them, Adriel gazed out at the gathering humans, and Dominion interacting with growing ease, paired teams, demonstrating their unique capabilities. Diplomatic representatives discussing further expansion of the alliance. "From auction block to changing galactic history," he mused. "All because they thought no one would bid on a fragile human." Until the Queen arrived, Elira completed with a smile that only he fully understood. A smile reflected not just on her face, but through the neural connection they shared, and saw strength where others perceived only weakness. Together, they turned to rejoin their guests, stepping forward as living symbols of what could be achieved when ancient barriers fell and new connections formed, a future neither had imagined, but both had helped create. In the grand pattern of galactic politics, their story would be remembered as the moment when everything changed, when a queen's unexpected bid on a supposedly fragile human set in motion forces that would reshape civilizations for millennia to come.